Hi, team. This is George. Appreciate all the amazing effort that I see in these discussions. We're getting into a lot of good detail. Right now, I want to share with you one of my biggest failures and look at it from the perspective of strategies and what I could have used to bargain with. So our bargaining chips to move forward to where at the beginning of this project, it would not have been such a flat failure. So let me give you some quick brief on this. Is we just won the contract. We were the company, Skunkworks, built 3 prototypes of this F-35 Joint Strike Fighter that you see here, and we won the contract. Now weren't set up for production. That was being done in Fort Worth, Texas, once we won the contract. But we were going to build all of these edges that you see here. They were going to be building the edges, and the edges were made up of a composite material. We'd never taken on a project like that before, to the extent that this F-35, as far as the amount of effort and time that it was going to take to build those. And I was the project manager. What I did was I sent 2 of our trainers. One was a structural trainer, so it was mostly metal, and the other one was a composite trainer, so composite expert and a structure expert. So the greatest training in the United States for composite layup. So in other words, how to build those plastic parts. And when they came back, our thought was, because this was the best in the United States, that we would just steal their program, teach our folks, and send them into the shop, and everybody would be wonderful and happy. As you can tell by the setup of this, didn't quite work that way. What happened? Our folks went over there, and the day after they got back, we had to go give a presentation of what we we're going to do for the training. The vice president was there, directors, managers, production operations, everybody was there. And they wanted to see what we were going to come up with. We had some pretty good relationships with all production operations and everybody else. So we didn't have time to vet everything that the 2 instructors learned in the training class. And they were going to lead the presentation because they knew it. I didn't. I trusted them, which I would still trust to this day, even though this is kind of where it blew up. It was absolutely my fault. They came in and they showed the production operations folks a metal salad bowl and how we're going to lay the composite materials over the salad bowl and go through the entire process to create this odd shape, because that was the hardest thing to do, is lay up on these weird shapes to make these things. About 3 minutes into the presentation, they were told to stop. We were told, all eyes shifted to me and said, "This will not work." And I immediately implied the first strategy, which is take ownership of that mistake and all that went wrong, my fault. So take the fault. The 2 trainers that I sent to get trained, they did everything that they were supposed to do, did a fantastic job of it. We missed the mark. Why did we miss the mark? Well, we could have employed another strategy. We could have renegotiated when we were going to give that presentation. I could have bought more time for us to get prepared, because I would have seen that and known that it wasn't going to work either. Then that leads us to the third strategy. First, take extreme ownership of any mistakes. Don't blame anybody. Let them know how you're going to fix it. That's priority 1. Take extreme ownership. The next priority is to tell them what you're going to do to fix it if you can. What I did was I said, okay, well, this won't work. This came from, and I explained to them, it came from the best training in the United States we have. Cost us several $1,000s each to send them to get this training, and it wasn't good enough. So that gave everybody a perspective that we're going to have to build our own, and it's going to have to be very unique. What happened was, I said, so my big question was, what's your vision of success from somebody beginning in our training program and going to the layup room, production operations room? What does success look like for that individual person? And that started opening up that conversation. So that inclusion of everybody, somebody mentioned that in our discussions too, about how you can get somebody from each of the teams, each of the organizations to be a part of the team, and then you're going to have that cohesion. Well, as soon as that got brought into the conversation, pocketbooks started opening, checkbooks started opening. We were able to get time on in the machine shop to actually machine tooling that we could use to lay up very similar parts to what the people were going to have to build. Makes sense, right? The parts that you build in training should be the parts that you build in the shop, if at all possible. We couldn't afford the material to do that with every single trainee that came through, so we built shorter versions. They were the same height, the same width, and everything else, but they were smaller parts. So instead of being 8 feet long, or I forget however long they were, we made them a foot long, foot and a half long, I believe it was. I have one of the parts at my desk at work. I'll show you that next week when I go in there. I'll wave it around on the camera. It's pretty neat. So that was the next step there, was to create that inclusive environment where all the organizations had to buy into what success looked like. And when they started spitballing ideas around the table, and the right people were there to make decisions with money to give us the budget to be able to do the things they wanted, we started coming up with some fantastic solutions that actually worked very well. One of the things that I did as a project manager was, one of the complaints that we always got was too much lecture. So I did something that was initially very that was pushed back very hard by my own team, my training team, was no lecture, can't lecture, period. You're going to have to figure out another way to get this information across. So we did demonstration performances, which is basically a lecture while you're doing something, but you're showing it at the same time. So you're just not giving information. They had other students who have gone through the one process. So the instructor would show it, everybody went through and built it. Then they would also have discussions led by the students, things like that. And it was a very intricate class, because they would even use mistakes that people would make. Because even if you tell step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, some people simply go step 1, step 3, step 2, step 5 until they, and then when they make a mistake, instead of just saying, okay, you failed, you're out, you made a mistake, we would use that as a teaching moment on how to troubleshoot it. So they actually got something valuable for class 2. So what's the bargaining chips that we had when we went through this? First one, or the strategies were, take ownership, find a better way, include everybody else, and then deliver. So we had to deliver a much better product. I had to get all that social capital back that I had to spend when I had to take the blame for inferior product that I let leave our training organization. What was the bargaining chips that I could have used in order to extend that meeting out? Well, I could have said, well, we simply can't give you the product that you want right now without being able to go through and look at this first. Could have done something like that. They could have pushed immediately back with the timeline, because the timeline was extremely tight, and to get all those people in one room together was hard. So that was highly unlikely, but that could have been a bargaining chip. Another bargaining chip could have been the final product. What does the final product look like? So instead of going in with an inferior product, training product that we were going to deliver, we could have come in with the initial, let's make this into a brainstorming session as well, because we want this to be the best product ever. So that was my biggest failure. It came back and we did absolutely amazing. We were training people how to build those leading edges in about half the time that normally would take. And that was because of the way we structured the training and the engagement of all the production operations, quality assurance, the IT folks, because they got us mobile, basically job orders. So they would actually have a job order on what would look like. We didn't use the actual production IT materials, but it mimicked what they would see on the job 100%. So just getting all those people together was the best thing that I ever did as a project manager. So just wanted to explain that, probably way too long-winded, but have a great one, and I hope it helps bring any clarity.